Does this lead into the concept of brain or mind mapping, brain mapping?
Talk to us a little about how Pope Francis was and how he received everything.
Are you available to play for the Pope at the Vatican? I thought he was messing with me.
Welcome, everyone, to Odds and Ends, Life, Entertainment, Theater, and the Arts. I am Andrew Joseph Kozlowski, and with me is my good friend, world-class musician, music producer, and co-host, Mr. Cool, Clyde Ballard. Hey, Clyde, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing good and still trying to learn. Still don't think I know enough about music, and I've been playing music a long time.
Wow, boy, oh boy, we're going to have quite a conversation about learning when it comes to this next guy we're bringing on.
We're going to call this episode Cello A Go-Go.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're thrilled. We have with us Michael Fitzpatrick, classically trained virtuoso, 4-string acoustic cellist, 5-string electric cellist, raised on rock and roll. I don't know if you all remember, but we had him on earlier in the year, and the response was just incredible. So we had to get him back on. He's, of course, the recipient of the Prince Charles Award for Music Excellence, conferred by His Royal Highness, the Prince of Wales. He's hailed as an interpreter of the Muse by the NPR, National Public Radio. He's at the forefront of using music as a vehicle for global transformation. He has shared the stage with His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, for the past 23 years, providing musical keynotes for His Holiness' public talks and teachings around the world, including the historic United States Capitol West Lawn Global Broadcast. The Dalai Lama said of Michael, the emotion induced by Michael Fitzpatrick's music is so powerful, it seems almost verbalized. Most recently, he performed the musical keynote for the Holy Father, Pope Francis' blessing ceremony at the Vatican. Fitzpatrick performs as a soloist around the world, including spotlight performances at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Hollywood Bowl, the National Cathedral, the United Nations, Lincoln Center, Town Hall, Merkin Concert Hall, the House of Blues, the Aspen Musical Festival. My God, we could go on and on and on. And of course, for His Majesty King Abdullah II at the Royal Palace in Jordan, and as a soloist with the Jerusalem Symphony Orchestra in Jerusalem. He is the recipient of the prestigious Aspen Fellowship from the Aspen Musical Festival. He subsequently served as the member of the Aspen Institute's Global Initiative on Arts, Culture, and Society during its tenure. Mr. Fitzpatrick is the music director of the Muhammad Ali Humanitarian Awards. It is my pleasure to bring on our good friend right after this little taste of this truly special artist. Ladies and gentlemen, the amazing Michael Fitzpatrick. Ladies and gentlemen, our good friend, American cellist and composer, Mr. Michael Fitzpatrick. How we doing there, Michael?
Doing great, man.
Yeah.
What's happening?
Thanks for reminding me that I'm American. I usually think of myself as a Kentuckian. So
A Kentuckian. Oh, wow. Is there a way to differentiate between the two?
Well, I'd have to think about that. What's coming to mind is the late, great Happy Chandler, who, of course, was baseball commissioner. But before that, he was governor of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And his line was, "I never met a Kentuckian who wasn't on his way home."
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah. And that's why they call it my old Kentucky home. Yeah.
Well, we're thrilled to have you back. You know,
Thank you, man.
When we had you last year sometime, what a response we got from our audience. And of course,
Awesome.
everybody kept asking us, when we get Michael back.
Awesome, man.
But you've been a world traveler, haven't you?
Well, I mean, in my mind, I still need a place to go, as Neil Young said. I mean, I finally, got back out there. About a month and a half ago, I went down to Asheville, North Carolina, played a series of concerts, and then just got back from LA, and then was just in Washington, D.C. But I hadn't been out since our interview.
Right.
Wow.
Just sitting on top of the mountain and trying to, I would say, maintain sanity, musical sanity, which is overrated, and work on my craft, and then try and imagine what things are going to be like when the world reopens, if it reopens. None of these things were clear, still not clear.
Well, what is that road leading you to at this moment? Yeah, what are you thinking?
I live my life in lyrics. Way back in the day, we're talking 1987, New York. The rule, which has never really changed, was take every gig, because you never knew when the one thing was going to lead to the next.
Exactly.
You just didn't know. And I still, to a large degree, have that same mantra, although I do apply Ronald Reagan's great line, "Trust but verify." Because you got to make, it's got to work for everybody. But if the pattern on the world chessboard got as, let's just call it, messed up as it got, with the way the pandemic just shut down everything and annihilated our psyches and our senses, and it was horrific. And there was, I think we've all had a hope. Surely this isn't how life on Earth is gonna be forever after. And then musically, we're always asking this: what can we do? How can the music serve as the medicine, like for real, not as a slogan, and not as some jib jab branding piece, but how can the music really heal ourselves? And we have to, first and foremost, and then how do we take it back out into the world?
Right.
Well, that was all going through my head from the last time we spoke till this moment. The only thing I want to add to that is, you can't replace the stage, right? Because there's no encounter. And that's why Neil Young said, live music is better, bumper stickers should be issued.
That gentleman says live music is better, bumper stickers should be issued.
And so it's good to be back out on the stage.
Yeah, isn't it interesting? We always turn to whenever this country or the world ends up in some sort of a bind, it's always the art or the music that they turn to for comfort and to bring them out of it.
Right.
Somewhere along the line, I'm thinking the same thing is going to happen here, obviously, if we ever find out what's going on with the science.
Right.
But we are going to be needed more than ever before when this is finally over, to get people out of their fears again and moving forward.
Yeah.
Did you ever think, are you even thinking about what it, well, I can't imagine if you could write a song at this point to kind of capture what it's been like to deal with this.
Yeah, no, it's a great inquiry. That's not where my attention went, and it's not where my attention had been prior to it, even with all the, I would say, the injustices and the indignities of the entire world, but specifically what has been, I think, an imbalanced racial justice playing field since Dr. King. But I've always been more, I would say, drawn to using lyrics to shape songs that are they're referential to situations that are going on that might be kind of messed up, but they're like tricks, right? The lyrics are like tricks where they get us to think not so much about where we're stuck, but
where we're going
and where we can be unstuck.
Right.
Right. And that's
what could be.
What could be. Right. Exactly.
Yeah, that's quite a challenge.
Now,
That's
in
right.
some ways, Michael, does this lead into the concept of brain or mind mapping, brain mapping?
Oh, well, I never really thought of it that way, but the answer is yes, because what little I know of neurolinguistic programming, right? How the language dictates our thought sequence, right? Just the way the words sort of spool out.
Right.
And that's why you listen to even I would say early Bob Dylan. Remember when he said to Ed Bradley on 60 Minutes said, where does that stuff come from? And Dylan slyly said, well, that deep wellspring of creativity, which is not really an answer.
Wow.
And then Bradley pressed him on it and said, come on, man, like, how'd you come up with that stuff? Can you still do it? And Dylan said, no, I can't do that. And then he laid out, some unbelievably complex lyric from 63. He says, but I can do other things. Right?
You wrote Blowing in the Wind in 10 minutes. Is that right?
Probably.
Just like that?
Yeah.
Where did it come from?
It came from, it was like, right out of that wellspring of creativity, I would think,
You ever look at music that you've written and look back at it and say, whoa, that surprised me?
I used to. I don't do that anymore. I don't know how I got to write those songs.
What do you mean you don't know how?
Well, those early songs were like almost magically written. Darkness at the break of noon, shadows even the silver spoon, a handmade blade, a child's balloon. Try to sit down and write something like that. There's a magic to that, and it's not Siegfried and Roy kind of magic. It's a different kind of a penetrating magic. And I did it. I did it at one time.
You don't think you can do it today? Does that disappoint you?
Well, you can't do something forever, and I did it once, and I can do other things now, but I can't do that.
And so there's a lyric in a set of song lyrics that I've written, and the song is called Pauline the Dream, right? And it goes like this. Pauline, the planetary dream collector, was a friend of mine. She worked the press. She pressed the myth onto scrolls of limestone. She said, here's the brain mapping part, planet mind is forming. New sphere in the sky, planet heart is shining. Now it's the time to fly. What we're going into now is the potential to be organized as a planetary species with a planetary mind that's coherent, right? That has a coherence to it. And so if we singularly think of our own brain mapping as becoming increasingly coherent or more in tune. Logic says it's like Horton hears a who. You know, if you tune the planet, you tune the individual, and if you tune the individual, you tune the planet. It's just the way resonance theory works. And I think what we're all trying to get at is, can we get to a tipping point where we get things moving in a better direction, and which is more harmonious, you know, with love and peace being the preferred fuel. Still, I think that's music's role, its function.
Right. Well, that's always been the role of music in a sense, moving towards love, trying to sing about love, trying to sing about imaginings, about being in love.
Yeah.
The ability that the music and its art has to communicate internationally. It's an international language. So that's why it's the greatest tool on the planet, to be able to reach out and touch people's hearts, especially when all the other things that are going on kind of stop us from reaching down into our heart.
Amen.
So music is really the way that we get to it. All right, so now you're out and around.
Yeah.
And are you liking what you see?
It's weird because everybody's a little rusty, and there's sort of a subdominant of, is this too good to be true? Is it okay that we greet each other with a hug, or, do we still need to do the fist bump or whatever? You can feel that because there's a kind of a, hey,
yeah.
And it's not clear it's just not clear what's going on still. Right. At first, I was I didn't have my sea legs back. I was a little wobbly the first couple shows. It was mind tricks, and I'm telling myself, yeah, man, you haven't done this in a year and a half. I don't care who you are, right? There's just rust, and you got the.
Are you speaking of your mind, body, spiritual connection to and through the instrument was a little precarious?
Yeah, you're just out of phase, right? Because plus. Energetically, it was just suddenly there's an audience, right? And the audience was, particularly I was down in Asheville, North Carolina. The audience was, everybody was, what I was picking up on was everybody's like, well, how are we supposed to deal with this? I would say by the time I got out of LA and over to DC, I had gotten back in, recording engineering terms, we always used to talk about clocking. I'd gotten my clocking back. So there was a certain kind of a pacing to the musical gallop, if you will. But I think mainly that just to feel the power of the connection with the audience, once I really felt like I got cooking again, it was like, it really was. I had a thought of, thank God it still works. Right.
Oh, sure. I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Michael, how did you see it as being different from before the pandemic when you were performing and the connection with the audience?
Yeah, well, that was part of what I was really curious about. Like, what is it going to be like? And there was no way to anticipate it. I don't think I'd gone that long, as a year and a half, without having played in front of an audience and. Man, I don't know.
20 years, 30 years.
20, 30 years, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Did you doubt yourself at all? Did you doubt yourself?
Oh, sure. You go through all kinds of, it's hard to tell if they're mind games.
Right.
Head trips.
Will my mind blank out? Will I forget a passage or fingering?
Well, my fingers still work. Right.
Yes.
And how will I adjust on the fly? And should I go for the back fence on the first time up at bat, or should I just try and get on base?
Right.
You just tell yourself, okay, my basic instincts are going to take over, but you got to be ready for God knows what, because anything can happen in the performance space.
Yeah, it had to be an unusual feeling to get started again, and then trying to, all these things going on in your mind, and you're still trying to gauge how the audience is connecting. on top of all of that, it makes it very it's
But it
hard
worked
to get
out, right?
hooked up. Yeah,
It was
but
good. In the end, it
so was
good,
there a
right?
turning point where you started to feel comfortable finally, and then
the turning point, oddly enough, was was a private concert in DC that ended up occurring at 8 a.m. because the folks that were that engaged me for it had to catch a flight back to LA. And so there was a wedding thing the night before. And so that was just how it happened. It was at 8 o'clock. And so partly because it was such an early hour, my normal, you didn't really have time to do anything other than like get set up and play, as opposed to having the whole day to think about it.
Right.
And so it kind of jump started me out of, where I'd left things off in LA, which I'd hit it, but I didn't smack it like, right in the sweet spot. That morning in DC, I was just on from the beginning. I mean, when you're just on from the get-go. And then the following evening, I did a concert at 7:30 in the evening, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm back in the flow. And it's kind of like, they always say pulling out all the stops. It's like remembering where all the stops are on the organ, and that so you've got access to them. You don't have to be fiddling with them. You it's warmed up, and you're back on the console.
You were in the zone.
In the zone. And I've decided, I'm just going to stay in it now because it's like I broke the 4-minute mile. I cracked through the sound barrier.
Now, the pieces you were playing, were they all spontaneous improvisational pieces, or they were specific pieces?
Yeah, they were specific pieces that basically comprise a set that over the years I've found works very effectively at like taking people on a musical journey. Right. And I play them without interruption. So there's no clapping in between each song, because I don't want that to shatter this kind of invisible web, energetic web that's being built up, so that at the end you get the whole dose of it.
Now, the entirety of your performance is about like 40 minutes, 45 minutes.
Pretty much clocks at 60.
Wow.
Yeah. And every once in a while, I'll be playing along and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm like playing nonstop, no break. Like there's no, oh, I think I'll sit this movement out. I'll let the keyboardist take the thing, I'll come back in after sitting out for 24 bars. It's like, so it is, there's kind of a Zen control to just that aspect of it.
Right.
So it helps to really be in the right mind frame and the right physical conditioning as best as possible. And then you just start, and then it's like a puzzle box opens up.
It's almost like being an athlete.
Totally.
Preparing yourself for what's before you, mentally preparing yourself, physically getting your rest the night before.
Yep.
Yeah. Is this the same music that you used at the Vatican?
A couple of the selections. Some of it's my own stuff, like the Invocation of the Earth. Some of there's some standards like Ave Maria. There's some Bach, but it's all, it pushes beyond the limits of the normal, I would say,
arc.
Yes, sonic universe. It goes way out into other dimensional spaces, because I'm convinced that's where it came from.
Talk to us a little about how Pope Francis was, and how he received everything. Maybe how you got involved in that. That might be a good little story too.
Sure. Well, how it landed on my dance card was I was visiting with the legendary actor from Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Mr. Richard Dreyfuss.
Wow.
He's a cosmic cat, to put it mildly. And we had shared the bill for a concert in Jerusalem a year prior. And he was the narrator of the second half of this piece, and I had a solo on the first half. And we just kind of hit it off. And so he said, look, if you're ever down in Orange County area out in LA, just, come on by and, you stay in the guest room, and we'll just, talk about cosmic stuff, which is very normal when you're talking to him. But he's one of those people, when you're in their presence, you're in the presence of Close Encounters. It's just the way it goes. So I remember we had this, it was an 8-hour conversation in the swimming pool in the back of his and his wife's beautiful home. And we're just having this trippy conversation, and we all had dinner. And then I retired to the guest room. And the next morning, about 7:30, I woke up, and there was an email from a very brilliant and humorous British doctor friend of mine. And he says, what are you doing on, I forget what the date was. Are you available to play for the Pope at the Vatican? Wow. I thought he was messing with me. So I wrote back. I said, you think I'm going to fall for that? And he was like, no, man, I'm serious. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I said, what do you have with the Vatican? So he said that he'd been approached by some of the organizers of this giant summit they were having. And he said, can you do it? I said, yeah, let's do it. So I flew over. The opening night reception was in the Vatican, and it was called the Statutory Hall, I think is what they called it. It was basically the Hall of Marble Statues. Something out of the Greek gods. I mean, I've never seen marble carvings of these ancient gods that were, it was mind-blowing. Right? And to play the cello in that space, because you want to excite all that marble.
The acoustics were great, right?
The acoustics were insane.
Woo! Yeah,
it was marble floors, marble statues, wood, and it was pretty much ideal. So that was opening night, and then the next day, it turned into quite a caper. Vice President Biden was giving the keynote. I had my cello up on stage, ready to get my cue. Biden's speech went over and over and over. And now the clock goes sideways.
Oh, boy.
I finally got my cue, and I went up to my cello, which was on the chair. I sat down, I picked up my bow, and I was just about to start. And I felt a hand on my shoulder, and I look up, and it's the Vatican security, and said, you have to leave the stage. The Holy Father is entering right now. And they told me if that could happen, right? If they needed to adjust, I had to be prepared. So I was like, wow. Right? Like, okay. So I exited stage left, and the Pope gave his keynote, and then it's a much longer story, but the upshot of it is I realized, okay, this is a blown gig, as we say. It's like, it's over. I'm not going to play a note, but at least I've been to the Vatican, but I want to get back out into the hall because I'd at least like to observe the Pope going around giving the blessings to people, because he was already making his way down the steps. So I find my way back out into what became the front row receiving line. And then I realize I got the best spot in the line. He's going to come straight over to where I'm standing. He walked right past the edge from you two, had no idea who he was. And we just had this, it was a powerful encounter that wouldn't have happened had I not been asked to leave the stage.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So now we have, and because so many episodes with the Dalai Lama where things would go wrong and then this magical thing would happen. And I was like, oh, it's one of those episodes, right? it was like a frozen moment in time in the handshake, which lasted a good 8 seconds. A long time.
It seemed like 5 minutes.
It seemed like 5 minutes, like everything just stopped. And it felt like a very powerful soul exchange. So then he went around me and I thought, okay, all's well that ends well. And I feel a hand on my shoulder and it's the same Vatican security guard who says, you can go play now. So they sent me back up. I had to go retrieve my cello and I came out and I sat down and played the Ave Maria, which was as he's going through the crowd, bestowing the blessings.
It was appropriate.
Totally appropriate.
Yeah.
And then as I watched the video feed afterwards just to kind of get a better sense of how it all fit together. And I watched as he did his final wave to the crowd and then he turned. He was walking back up the steps. You could see him look over and he spotted me on the diagonal. So he put it together in his head. Oh, that was that guy. Right. That's how it went. You know, it was just one of those things where by just staying present as possible in the moment,
something greater happened.
Something greater happened. Thank you. That's exactly right.
Thank you all for tuning in to Odds and Ends tonight. We like to pay homage to Barry Harris, who was America's oldest living jazz professor, and he taught the whole world the jazz vernacular. May he rest in peace, and my life will always be blessed for getting to know him and having him embrace me almost as a son and friend. We dedicate this episode to NEA Jazz Master Barry Harris. May he rest in peace. And also a special shout out to my brother Michael Fitzpatrick. Good night and stay bright.